into another one. Here we go. We're recording. So today we're going to be having another webinar, bringing a group of industry leaders in to discuss the current impact of tariffs on the air freight industry. And these experts are going to talk about how forward-thinking freight forwarders are adapting to the shifting regulatory landscape and how they're optimizing operations and finding new opportunities among all the challenges. And there's no shortage of challenges. We know that. So let's see. We've got Chris Condon from Captain Cargo. Chris, how you doing? Can you hear us? I think yep, you're not
Yeah,
on.
Brandon. Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you joining the call today or joining the webinar today. I'm looking forward to talking to something that everybody seems to be talking about, industry tariffs.
Great, and good to have you. And then, of course, we have Jeremy from F2 F International. He's going to talking about the forwarder side, the dark side of things. So, Jeremy, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Always good to see you, Brandon, and thanks again, Chris. Always a pleasure to be here.
And we might have some folks coming in and out of this as the day progresses or as the hour progresses here. Um, I think that it's at this point in time, a lot of customers are asking our members, what do we do next? I just came back from the Cargo Network Services, the CNS conference in Miami a couple weeks ago. And the most common question is, what are you telling the members? What are you doing at this point in time? How are you getting people prepared? Um, and what's kind of interesting to me was that as I talked to people at this conference, there were 700 people there. And as I talked to forwarders, they were telling me, look, we've seen a hit, but the hit hasn't been as profound as we thought it was going to be initially. So I guess bouncing to you, Chris and Jeremy, do you think that's because things are just delayed and you got that 90-day pause and the that brought the tariffs at least down from China 30%, that things got restored, and so to them it's business as usual at least for the next few weeks. Well, what do you? I'll go to you, Chris. What's your sense there?
Yeah, my sense is it's kind of like a warning shot, right? Like importers got to figure out what they want to do long term, and so they kind of have a grace period, if you will, of do they want to manufacture and where do they want to manufacture, and do they want to be reliant on one country versus multiple countries. I actually think it's from a freight forwarding perspective, I think it's a huge benefit for freight forwarders. If you get outside the the cash outlay, from a duty perspective and that kind
Yeah.
of aspect of it, I think the benefit for the freight forwarder is to really be a advocate for the importer, and to understand that, hey, I want to import from, or what if I want to manufacture in Mexico, or if I want to manufacture in Germany or India, wherever the other places, is the movement of those goods aren't as established as Asia, China to the US or Trans-Pacific, right? So as a freight forwarder, I think we have an opportunity to create real value again, versus that's outside of rates, which I think is pretty exciting from a freight forwarder's perspective. And we've seen it from a Captain Cargo perspective. We've seen it as well, right? Our number of quotes have gone through the roof. Now, they're not necessarily booking as much, right? So our quotes have gone up, but they're not as booking it. But they are looking to see what are the other options, right? What airlines are, fly from India to the U.S. or Kenya to the U.S. And those type of things. So I think there's real value there that if we can hold on to it and not get sucked into the political side of it, good, bad, or indifferent, because for us it really doesn't matter. We still got to deal with it. So if we can focus on how to support the customer, I think it's a real a win for the freight forwarder.
So,
No,
Jeremy, what do you hear
yeah.
from customers at this point?
I'd say to echo Chris's point there. the good side or the good part about this is we're getting a lot of conversation now. A lot of customers are coming, what's going on? What should we do? What does it look like if we depart this week? What does it look like if we depart that week from this country? They're really having a lot more conversations with us. So to Chris's point, we're getting a lot more opportunity to kind of show our value and to explain a few other elements that come up in that trade lane. Um, Another point I like to bring up is, unfortunately, a lot of the customers and companies that I'm dealing with have experience from the COVID pandemic on, that trans-Pacific route getting kind of disrupted and getting really expensive and getting really chaotic, and then
Right.
dropping in volumes and, having to write a blank check at certain points. And so, unfortunately, I would say a lot of guys, companies are prepared or have some recent experience on kind of what happened recently. So I think we've seen a diverse amount of approaches. We've had some customers that just purchased a lot in March and this whole first quarter, and they tried to stock up as much as they could. And
So
then
they
we've had
front loaded
customers,
goods. They front loaded goods
Mhm.
coming in,
yep,
filling warehouses, I'm assuming.
yep,
And
those that could, right, or those that had suppliers that could produce at that rate. We had others that were trying to do, the last minute ocean freight and get the last spot on the last boat on the way out, and it either worked or it didn't. When you had some poor stories with, unfortunately, the chaotic announcements of the tariffs, some applications that they didn't anticipate, happened. And almost the reverse has happened now. Like you mentioned in the beginning, Brendan, with a pause and everything, we're now seeing, like Chris said, a big influx of quotes, still an influx of questions, but the bookings are, it's still not March, I'll say. We're still waiting for that to kind of pick back up.
Mhm. So let's take out our crystal balls. I'll take my dusty crystal ball out. What do we think happens at the end of this 90 days?
From a tariff perspective,
Well, let's look at
uh,
from several perspectives. First of all, what do you think the White House is going to say? Do you think they're going to just prolong this, or do you think there'll be a deal
I
sometime?
think I
Realize
think there,
anything can
yeah,
happen.
my gut says there'll be a deal made. I don't think it'll be. Um, my gut says there'll be a deal. What that deal looks like, who it benefits more, who knows?
Yeah,
But we're too reliant in terms of manufacturing on China, and other countries for that matter, for us not to have some type of deal. Um, but the deal may not be that significantly better than what it is today. Like, who knows?
so, Jeremy, how do you seeing things? I mean, if you had to take out your crystal ball.
That would I would have a very effective crystal ball. What we really hope is just for some consistency. If the numbers are 200% or 20%, we want them to stay that way, for the next 10 years at least.
Right.
That allows us to kind of plan around it or to mitigate things for our customers to have conversations with their suppliers. Here's what's happening. They can't really have some of those conversations right now when the conversation isn't consistent. A lot of these companies are purchasing quarters in advance. So it's really hard to pre-plan when you have such a high tax and, depending on your commodity, a very impactful to your value. Um, we've coached our customers on different ways to help that process coming in. Obviously, talking about different HS codes, working with invoices or different Incoterms with the supplier, the obvious things. But the big problem is and that's the problem. One of the bigger hurdles is it's a very quick 7-day invoice. So as soon as you arrive and you file that import, you have 7 to 10 days to pay your taxes. If it's not paid, then you start to get fees. So what some customers have had to do is rely on certain customs brokers or forwarders to front that, and that'll come with what's called usually a disbursement fee, which is an additional 1 to 2 to 3%, right?
And risk to you
So
too, right? Risk to you guys too.
yes, yeah, cash flow risk, kind of everybody involved, right? So
Hmm.
um, we try to encourage our customers. There's things called automatic duty withdrawal. So as soon as
Yeah.
you file your entry, you can automatically set up your bank account to pay. You
And you
don't go through the
connect
customs
direct
broker
into
program.
customs, right? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, and so you kind of get rid of that disbursement or those extra fees because the extra 1 or 2% can be quite a bit of
Well,
money in some of these
why would
situations.
you an importer not connect directly to customs? Because they want to use you
How
guys as a bank or what?
Cash flow issues,
Cash
in
flow.
my
right? At the end of
experience,
the day,
yes, it was
it's
just
all
cash flow
cash flow.
issues.
So it's easier to go to the forwarder or the broker.
Well,
And,
the
And so
forwarder a lot of times will give them 30-day terms, depending on their size. They'll give them
yeah.
terms, and so they don't have to pay within 7 days. because obviously when you import stuff, they're not selling it right away, stereotypically, right? Stereotypically, it goes to a warehouse. Stereotypically, it goes to, let's say if you're even like a Costco or Sam's Club, right? It goes to your warehouse, and then it's distributed to their warehouses, and then it's distributed to the stores. And then depending what their sale is like they may not get paid until the product actually gets sold to the store, like
Sure.
in home goods or garden goods, those type of things. So it's all about cash flow, how much cash they have on hand. A lot of companies are dealing with margins that don't allow them to float that, right, for 30, 60, 90 days because they just don't have the margin in their product, right?
Yeah, and Chris, if at the end of the 90 days the president doesn't get what he wants, and all of a sudden these numbers are back up to 145%. These are big dollars.
Massive.
This is massive.
Massive.
So
we see the
go ahead, Jeremy.
I would say we see the usual swing when it happened this last time. The obvious happened, right? Everyone canceled their air freight, and the Chinese air freight was the lowest it's been since COVID. It's now trickled back up a few dollars, right, to where it was. So, as the freight forward, we look to take advantage of those things. We often say that, we thrive in chaos, or if there's a storm or something, there's a way to kind of take advantage of it. This is why we just keep preaching that we just want it less chaotic, right? So that we can actually kind of have a plan and get a strategy together instead of just being on our heels so much.
Yeah, so I would say that certainly we don't want the tariffs to go up to those lofty numbers that are just, 30%, not great. I'm sure a lot of importers are not happy with that either, but maybe more manageable. 10%, I think, is most manageable. The manufacturer eats a third, someone else eats a third, and of course the final importer eats a third. Okay, they can swallow it. But as we get higher, it just seems pretty scary.
I think the challenge where my head always goes, I think for the AFA, tariffs makes a lot of sense to talk about, kind of the long-term stuff because you guys are lobbying and you're in DC or there's people on your group that's in DC that does it. For us, or at least for me, I don't control any of that stuff, right? Like I have I don't have the power to have or any influence to do those things. All I can do is like, hey, how do I find a solution to support my customer?
Yeah, right? and for those who didn't join us on the first meeting we had, Chris, give your 10-second elevator speech so that people understand what you guys do.
We're the only AI agent that does quoting. Currently, right now, U.S. exports all automated through your rates, our rates, doesn't matter. But we'll respond to your customers in less than a minute with a competitive rate, door to airport, soon to be door to door, soon to be imports. And why that's important is because in air freight, unlike ocean, there's a lot of carriers. Right? It's the asset between the truckers and then the assets of the airlines is much more vast and more complex than the ocean. I think there's 20 globally, right? So everybody's fighting for the same space on the same steamship line. Where air freight is, 2 months out of the year, you may have British Airways goes to Cincy to London twice a week. Do you know that, and do you know what the rate is of that? So we help support you, giving you the knowledge to support your customer needs when they need it.
And I think the most fascinating aspect of what you're offering is that you go into our emails and read them. And make sense of them, which is probably a step ahead in the right direction.
Well, some people don't like that. So, but yes, we read your emails, we digest it, we put into our rate engine. We actually go through there's a bunch of decision trees, and there's lots of AI agents that help with that, if you will. My favorite example is Milwaukee to London, right? Most people quote, truck it to Chicago, pick an airline, Virgin American or VA, have daily flights or multiple daily flights a day, Chicago to London. So you normally quote it off that. And if the requirement is 3 to 4 day transit, no problem. But our booking agent, which we'll launch here in the next 30 to 60 days, will actually, when the customer books it, is really cool because now we're going to look at different routes to still meet the expectation of the customer. So for Milwaukee to London, for example, hey, we quoted it over Chicago, but now that we have the freight, we're going to actually book it through Cincinnati because tomorrow's flight is 50% less expensive than out of Chicago. So now the freight forwarder can make some money, more money than if they were to just go out of Chicago. Same transit time, same requirements, so the customer's happy. So yeah, there's some pretty cool things that we're doing for sure, at least in my mind. But again, we are trying to give the power back to the forwarder to add value to the buyer or seller, right? So whoever's paying for their services, the intent is that we're trying to meet the customer where they're at, not guess on what they need, right? So sometimes it's not the least expensive. Sometimes it's the fastest. Sometimes it's, hey, it just got to be faster than ocean, right? So I can ship it on an indirect right, or I can ship it on a parcel carrier, UPS, DHL, FedEx, etc. But if you don't know your customer, it's very difficult to win business based on rate, right? And that's why I think some of these things with tariffs is it forces us as freight forwarders to have conversations to know our customer and meet their expectations, not just guess that, hey, I'm not winning the freight because I'm 10 cents a kilo more expensive.
Right. And Jeremy, I'm what Chris just talked about is one of the things that scares me the most is we're talking about tariffs and uncertainty is quotes that are inaccurate.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not good.
No, yeah, you're getting your good paragraphs of, subject to, please warning, rates could change. But to keep the crystal ball out, and kind of pitch it back to, not to throw it to Chris right away, but how far are we from being able to use our AI tools to help with this exact thing too, right? We're obviously, to your hope, Brandon, going to get some trade deals here at the end of the year, maybe some very complex trade deals that are not the same unilaterally across each country. How can we meet them where they're at with, yeah, here's your airline options, here's your Milwaukee, sweet treat there, the different tariffs for these different interactions as well. Here's the different risks involved with trading with China versus trading with Mexico, trading with Canada, right? I would really like to see, the AI kind of come in to help the shippers even with just HS classification. I know it's a big job with a customs broker, but what's there. But just like I said, there's going to be some hard to understand if, ands, and buts on these trade deals. Steel, but except for this steel manufactured here in this way, right? So all the help that we can get with that does help us have that conversation and kind of meet the customer kind of where they're at.
Yeah, I think AI is kind of funny. Is I think a lot of people use AI as kind of their catch-all, be-all, and it's not, right? AI. I love AI. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great, and
I think it's cool. I'm a big AI fan, but I understand it's got some pitfalls. But
well, and the reality of it is like not if everybody did it the same, then it's not a problem, right? Then AI makes a lot of sense. But just like what Jeremy said about the HTS codes, like HTS codes are important, and that's there's already AI out there that will help you classify, but people want to do it. Okay, well, it's not quite exactly. So I'm going to do this one because it's a lower duty rate, right? Or I'm not going to quite do this one because it's a higher duty rate, whatever the logic is. So AI will help with those, and I do think AI will be able to digest, but it's all based on the rules, right? It's all based on the knowledge of what those rules. So to Jeremy's point, if the rules aren't clear, then it's up for interpretation, which up for interpretation creates chaos.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeremy, have you had customers call you up and after they've received a bill that wasn't quite as accurate as anticipated? And what did that conversation go like? Where are those conversations going like?
Yeah, no, we've had a couple, unfortunately, and they're not fun to have. In the beginning and the end of the day here, to Chris's point, we are here for the customer. We are here to help them freight forward any cargo from any country to any country in the world, right? So when things like this happen that really impact their bottom line, and they're reaching out for help where, I mean, I think everyone in the room knows there's no realistic help other than the obvious. You kind of do everything else, right? You talk to them about how the rate got here, how we need to pay it, what are the limitations on paying it, how long do we have to pay it? Are there any reclassification rules right now on this certain HS good? Can we look at this again in 3 months if something changes? and just give them information, right? Try to be as factual and informative as possible. Um, well, like I said earlier, there's a lot of if, ands, and buts with some of these tariff lines, and so being able to explain everything so it makes sense to them gives them a little peace of mind. In the end of the day, it is a cost of doing business, is how the governments like it to be interpreted. So that's how it is consumed at the end of the day. However aggressive that is, but I can tell you the emotions definitely come more into play when the ticket that was supposed to be 20 grand is now 120 grand.
So
It
are,
hurts
are
them.
you taking a more proactive approach that when the cargo is tendered to you, and now before it even departs the origin, picking up the phone saying, I just want to let you know, this is what this shipment looks like based on today's environment. Are you
Oh
ready?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're given expectation schedule right from time of quoting. So if you
Hmm.
ask me right now, Brendan, how to get the container from China to here, I'll go, here's your rate, and just so you know, in 30 days might be a little bit more, and in 90 days we do expect a bit of chaos. So if you want to book some air freight, let me know. But we can get this going for you. But yeah,
Well, because
more information the better. Copying
Yeah.
him in with the customs broker, having the conversation very on the table and
Getting
not
everyone on
behind.
the
So
same
yeah.
page. Yeah. 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 Um, so my thought is that during this 90-day break, we're seeing ships being loaded. The previously canceled sailings are starting to come back up again. And then at the end of the 90-day period, was it August 12th or whatever the day
I
is?
believe so, yeah. Second week of
Um,
August.
yeah, we're going to see a surge in air freight. What do you think? Do you think that's accurate?
yeah, I think that you'll see it. Obviously, people that don't plan as well, or trying to beat the if they think the tariff is going to go higher, they'll absolutely try to beat that. If it's cheaper to ship it via air versus paying the duty or the tariff rate, for sure, that'll absolutely happen.
Hmm. What about on and Jeremy, this goes to you in terms of routings.
Mhm.
We're seeing some scary stuff now. I personally think that this Russia-Ukraine situation is going nowhere fast. That's just Brandon's opinion. Maybe you guys see it differently, but from what I'm reading right now, the president has not been successful in working something out with Putin, and now the rhetoric's starting to amp up. It can get ugly pretty quick. Um,
Yeah.
and right, so
Mhm.
are you talking to customers about alternative logistic strategies where let's stay clear of that type of thing?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll add, wartime airspace is never obviously something anyone wants to deal with. And
no.
unfortunately, one of the countries in the war has quite a lot of and landmass right now. So
Hmm.
not flying over Russia is a pretty big deal. When I talk to Delta and American Airlines, they educate me on how much extra fuel and less cargo they have to pack on
And it
now
puts them
to
and you by
exactly
extension at a severe disadvantage, right? I mean,
right.
not good.
So you kind of you start with it there. Um, I do hope at least the war gets downgraded to where commerce and civilization can resume while governments decide what they want to do with borders. But to your point, it's trying to stay ahead of it and trying to keep the customer informed. And then just trying to keep your ear to the street with anything that's coming up.
So I think
Oh, and
go ahead, Chris.
sorry, yeah, besides the Russian-Ukraine conflict, obviously, when Pakistan and India, had some issues, American Airlines doesn't fly over Pakistan into India anymore, or this particular
Hmm.
route, right? So again, how do you spend that time with your customer to inform them and be more proactive? Because I think freight forwarders, at least when I was in those shoes, we were really good at reacting and solving problems as they happen.
Hmm.
We're not as good, stereotypically, as being proactive on getting the information out and giving options in front, right? We normally take orders and execute those orders versus being a true partner, at least in my opinion, with the shipper or consignee to give them a solution to whatever this problem is, right? It doesn't matter what the problem is. It could be the fact that a plane broke down, right? Or why does adding fuel going around Russia, how does that affect air freight? Well, because they don't have capacity, as much capacity because of weight to carry cargo, right? But most people, I believe, here well, they carry more fuel. They don't quite understand the fact that that affects your rate because it's less capacity on that craft.
Sure.
Right. So we're reducing
That's
capacity
that
on
old
their
law
line.
of supply and demand, isn't it? They haven't repealed that one yet.
That's right. But if we can be more proactive, then I think we all say this, right? And all believe, hey, the more proactive we can be, the better. And now with AI and with these tools that are coming out, Captain Cargo obviously being one of them, is we're trying to give you the freight forwarder to be more proactive and then spend more time with the customer. Unfortunately, or what I'm fearful of, is that we just take that as try to put that in our back pocket instead of taking that time and those resources to really know your customer and know what their expectations and really be a partner, not a vendor.
No, it's a great
I think
time
that is
for it
key.
because
Mhm.
the customers right now are asking, "What should I do, Jeremy?" We're in every other year, it's here's what you please should do. Please go for this air freight product, or please go for our new Milwaukee lane, to your example. But no, yeah, right now it's we get the opportunity to the conversations are coming to us. So I always say with freight forwarding, you could always be doing one more thing extra, right? To the plane or the warehouse comment. Did you call and make sure they're not taking lunch as soon as you get there, right? There's always one
Yep.
more thing that you can kind of check on. So to that attitude, yeah, any tools uh, help us have some of those conversations quicker, from quoting to news reports to anything, to just be able to stay on the phone with our customers, as much as we can.
Yeah, as a freight forwarder, I would imagine if you're not current events oriented, you should be now.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
yeah. If your purchaser has to remind you on why they're pressured,
Exactly.
yeah, and you're in the service industry, it doesn't really translate well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And
And keep it professional and solution based, and and try to stay away from the emotion, whatever side of the aisle you're on, or political side. It's like, who cares? We got a problem to solve. Let's solve it.
yeah. And I think one of the scary parts is that we've seen that Russia is starting to focus on the logistics industry as a way to, as a mechanism,
Mm.
to deliver whatever uh, malfeasance is coming down the pike. And so I think we need to be ready for that as well, and potential impact that could have on us from a
The same thing,
strategy.
when this hopefully ends, the rebuild, right? So it'll rely on everyone else in the world to kind of bring materials back in to rebuild these areas back up. So it's all one big wheel.
Yeah. And we'll
Well,
be,
and how critical is freight forwarding and our logistics that we do, right? I mean, every war is won and lost with logistics and getting fuel and all that kind of good stuff. And yet, it's really, in a lot of cases, an afterthought, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to manufacture it here. I'm selling it to these consumers here. And then once that's done, oh, I got to figure out how to move it, right? I got to figure out, is it air, ocean, is it truck, whatever. Again, just the more proactive we can be on sharing how valuable we are, the better.
what's interesting to me is how many freight forwarders are involved behind the scenes that you don't hear about until after it's all over or whatever. We have a lot of members that, do work in those areas. And to Jeremy's point, they're involved in the ramp up, the rebuilding, the whatever it is. They're not part of the skirmish. They're just there in support of whatever is happening.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
No,
So,
that's right.
Chris, we talked last month and we talked about the capabilities of Captain Cargo and what you guys are coming. Let's go back over that again in terms of what's changing. What in the last month or so, what have you guys come up with and what are you excited about?
Well, we got our three agents, which is Laura, which is a nod to my wife. She keeps my family together, so that's the nod to her is really the quoting agent, right? The quoting agent is really, in essence, taking all your different vendors and or suppliers or partners, wrapping them up in a bow and responding to your customer again within two minutes. We have our booking agent that we should launch here in the next 30, 60 days that will book it with the trucker, reroute it, book it with the airline, and then book it with the trucker and or broker at the other end. But what we're really excited about is our agent called, we're calling her Rosie, like Rosie from the Jetsons, is a nod to her.
Okay.
Because it was a childhood cartoon that I watched.
Rosie
It was
was
very,
the maid. right?
Yes, she was the robot that
Yep,
that
the
did
maid
with
robot.
flying cars everywhere and all that kind
Right.
of good
She'd come
stuff.
in serving drinks and whatnot.
Yeah. But to Jeremy's earlier point today, Rosie will she's our exception agent. And if you think of like let's say Milwaukee to Joburg, South Africa, oh, and you're flying it over London, and for whatever reason the plane breaks down, she'll rebook it, obviously, because every airline obviously rebooks the next flight. But let's say that next flight isn't for 5 days and the buyer needs it there tomorrow. She will create all the different solutions routing wise and provide that to the buyer to make that decision. So from a timing aspect, Jeremy's sitting here in the US, the customers in Joburg, obviously there's 8 to 12 hour difference in time. The buyer can make the decision in real time to benefit their manufacturing or their situation. So maybe they got to reroute it instead of on BA, they want to reroute it on Virgin Airlines, but Virgin is 10 grand more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's an uncomfortable conversation for Jeremy to have with the buyer, saying, "Hey, I'm sorry the airplane blew out a tire. They got delayed, but the price you paid won't meet your need, right? Or spend 10 grand." And so doing this in real time, the logic behind it is that you may want to spend 10 grand because you need it there tomorrow, because you might have to spend a couple $1 million because of the line down situation.
Yeah.
Right? Or you're okay with a couple days delay and you're okay with it because you don't need it quite that fast. So again, we're giving the power back to the buyer. And again, having Jeremy and his customers really talk about strategy and execution, not rates. Right. So we're trying to eliminate the rate as being the only issue on how to move freight.
How do you guys update your tariff database?
Oh, it's that's a little bit of a secret sauce, but we do use a lot of it. So we obviously have our own. We obviously use we Cargo One, Web Cargo, Cargo AI. So all these rate repositories that are out there, we're connected or we have visibility to all those, and then we're gathering that information. And we're not done yet, but the idea is that we'll be able to predict rates in the future based on capacity and or other factors. Like in the summer out of Dallas, they can't, is it because it's too hot? There's something in Dallas where it's too hot, so they can't take as much cargo, reducing capacity, which creates increase in rates. Or the opposite, where it decreases the fuel, so it increases the amount of weight they can pull, which increases the capacity of freight they can put on it, so it lowers the rate, right? So part of that's the old school MI or AI, which is machine learning and predictive analytics and those type of things, which I think is the cool part. Most of us think the LLM or chat, the open AI type stuff is the really cool part, but that's just conversation in my mind. It's the execution of how can I improve my service to my customer tomorrow, is by having that information or be able to predict the on-time delivery. Take that Milwaukee to London, for example. If the freight forwarder says, okay, hey, yeah, I have an 80% chance of making the Chicago to London flight, but I have a 95% making the Cincy to London flight. The Cincy's 2 cents more a kilo, but I want to make sure without going to express level, I'm going to go through Cincy, even though it's a little bit more expensive, I have a higher probability of being on time because of the trucker. Maybe because I'm using Trucker A out of Milwaukee, and they're horrible on Fridays, but on Mondays the Trucker A is great. So don't use Trucker A on Fridays, because on Fridays they never deliver on time.
The right? 2 cents a kilo is a good risk mitigator.
That's right. Yeah. So again, you're giving value back to the freight forwarder, who ultimately has that power to keep and maintain that customer relationship.
Are you putting tariffs into the database too?
No, because we're not doing any customs. Now there is some AI out there that is doing it. I've had different conversations with some really smart people about tariffs that are, but it seems to go over my head when they start talking about HTS codes and country of origin, FTZ and bonded, and that. I just want to move freight.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, just to remind the audience, ask questions in the chat. It comes up on our screen. We'll be happy to ask more. If Jeremy uses you guys, how secure is the data that Jeremy.
Yeah, so all of his data, or all of our customers' data is we'll just say it's kind of, I forget the technical term, because I keep in mind I am a freight guy. So I'm going to say whitewashed or blinded, whatever you call it. We don't store his personal data or his
Yeah.
customers' personal data.
Mhm.
We do store shipment types, right? So weight, DIMS, date, when did we get it, when was it booked, when was it quoted. So we're capturing all that data.
That's part of the learning model.
It's part of the ML predictive analytics that we'll use.
Mhm.
And then you tie into things like tariffs, right? You tie in what is the value of the dollar? What is the value of gold? What is the weather like? All those things we can predict, or we will be able to predict how that affects capacity, how that affects, which ultimately, how that affects rates, right? Or rate per kilo. And then we start thinking about consolidation. Is it like, how can we take 5 or 6 different freight forwarders that are shipping, let's say JFK to London, or JFK to pick a destination, Singapore, it doesn't matter. They're all we know what they're paying per kilo. We know what the airlines is charging per kilo.
Yeah.
And if we can reduce that rate through consolidation of some sort, either a virtual consolidation or building a ULD, which we can save 20 to 30%. How do we do that? We're not doing that today. But that the logic is, how do we maximize the capacity in the aircraft without jeopardizing, IP, right? So, hey, this is my customer, Jeremy's customers, Brandon's customers thing. But there's got to be a way that we can give some of that power back to the freight forwarder to maximize the capacity with the airlines.
And that's what we want. It's just options. The same thing my customers want. They are happier when they have 10 different schedules to pick from, and they say, "Ooh, this one looks good, but I won't be in on Thursday, so this one's actually better," right? So more options, the better. That's what we all want.
So Jeremy, you're not a huge forwarder. You're not one of the intergalactics. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, as a matter of fact, a lot of people would say it's a good thing. I come from a small forwarding background.
BSV is not trying to purchase it yet. So
yeah. So I'm wondering, if I still had my company, would I would I realistically adopt what Chris is offering? And I think this notion of looking through my emails is interesting, but at the same time, I guess I would adopt it if I had oversight until I became, fully confident in all the agents that it provides. Would that be a realistic approach?
100%. And if you remember, if you're the same as me, a good portion of your customers were also other freight forwarders. And so when you communicate with other freight forwarders, it's just a little bit different than when you're conditioning to a different, shipper USA here, right? And so when they can really, I've explained to them kind of what Chris does and how I can get their options, they are all for it, right? Because what this means is that at any time zone, at any place, all of my freight forwarders can get their rates instantly. If they want to have a follow-up conversation because they just don't trust it, or they had a bad trucking experience last time and they want to talk to me about it, absolutely, you'll still get, when I get to the office and we'll talk and things like that, the traditional experience like you're talking about. But there is quite a bit of business, especially from the freight forwarder community, or even the people like Chris mentioned earlier that are just kind of probing right now. It's a huge benefit and a huge tool for them, and they're coming to your platform, and they're coming to your,
Sure.
BrandonFried.com to check the rate, right? So that
And Jerry, I got to tell you, from my perspective, I mean, it's been a while since I've been on the transactional side of things. The research and just, all of that, it was just a ton of work. I mean, it was just, it didn't mean I wasn't genuine. I mean, it was just a ton of work.
Well, I think that's where a lot of people get missed, or there's a cost to quote, right? And your win percentage on quoting isn't high, right? You don't get paid to quote, but you got to quote to win the business. I think our data shows, I think it's 20 to 30% win rate is like on the high end of your win rate, right? Most rate forwarders are in between 10 and 15%. And so
this is winning quotes from overseas agents that you might not have a steady relationship with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they get a quote, and you got to quote it.
I'm surprised. Yeah, That sounds generous at 20 to
Yeah,
30.
well,
Yep. Yep.
people aren't always as honest when you ask them a direct question, right?
Yeah.
You always kind of double it, right? It's kind of like when your customers are saying, "Hey, I move 100 tons a month." They probably move 50, right?
Not
Right?
because our
Um,
industry isn't known for not telling the truth. Okay.
that's right. That's right. But I think it's human nature. We don't want to say that our win percentage is lower. And again, part of the data that we give you, to your point, Brandon, is yes, we have the way that we do it is you can absolutely control it. You don't have to respond to your customers right away. Though I think that's it does. You don't get the full value, but it has all the different options out there. So 1,000 airlines around the world. It's impossible for any one of us to know what their routes are, what their rates are, who their GSA is, who is it direct, is it not direct, all that stuff, right? And to be able to do that quickly, right? To your point, it's a lot of time, a lot of research. What trucker, even out of the US, like, hey, it's out of Montana, what trucker's up there, right? How can I get a competitive rate? Do you really want to spend an hour or two making phone calls for 300 kilo shipment? Of course not. Because your win percentage 10%. So you rather spend your time on taking care of the business that you have and let Captain Cargo do the quoting for you.
Yep. Like you said, it was research. You were looking up your rates, you had your spreadsheets, you had your secret spreadsheets that you kept your good rates on,
Yep.
and you were compiling all that, and then hopefully not getting any phone calls or emails or other employees coming in and things like that. So uh,
Yep.
you can do with what the tool with what you want, right? That's how I always kind of phrase it. You can either just take the quote, not look at it, and just chuck it right to the customer, hope for the best, or you can tailor it up. I mean, the first couple of quotes we looked at was, why is Chris shipping it this way? Why does it come through this way? If I'm the customer, why is it just the cheapest,
Yeah, I was
or
just
how
going
does
to
this really
say,
work?
Jeremy, I was just going to ask that question. How do you know Chris isn't Captain Carter isn't hallucinating somewhere? I mean, it's AI, it hallucinates. How
So
do you know that that's not the case?
yeah, right now,
Brandon, I like to call it dreaming, not a
Dreaming.
hallucination. I
Okay.
like to
All
say he's
right.
dreaming.
All right.
yeah. Right now, transparently, we have access to other tools, right? We still have access to our same reps, even if we don't want to contact them 24/7 with every quote anymore. We still have access to being able to find out what the market rates are, or what the sale rates are, or if the Detroit office is trying to, move some more cargo than the Chicago office right now. We still get those communications. And the best part is we can kind of use Captain Cargo as our rate hoster as well. So say I still get those conversations, but I'm still not interested in cracking open that spreadsheet. I can just send that to Captain Cargo. They can apply it to my specific account, maybe not your specific account, right? And then we can
Mm-hmm.
still rock with it.
Mm-hmm. Chris, how often you get calls from Jeremy type people who say, this doesn't look feasible. This doesn't, I mean, and when you get
Yeah,
them,
we don't get the not feasible. We get the well, I'm special. I have special rates to here. I'm different. You don't understand my customer. We get a lot of those type of conversations, which I love because okay, hey, we didn't think of this. Okay, so we can change it. May
yeah,
not be for Jeremy.
I was going to say, and sometimes they're right.
Absolutely,
Right. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
and, we all like to think of ourselves as special, but the reality is sometimes they have a unique type of
Yeah,
shipment
yeah.
that,
So one of the things that we're doing that was, I don't know if it was Jeremy or who told us, but like we are now building a tool, or part of the quote will actually give options. So cheapest, fastest, and then we have one customer says, hey, I want to know the best value. And my response to them on Friday goes, well, how do you calculate value? Right? Because it's obviously easy for me to get the fastest, right?
that's a
Shortest
loaded
transit days.
question. Yeah.
It's easy to get the cheapest, right? So how do we
Mm-hmm.
calculate value? So if you can determine how you calculate something, we can build it to meet your customer needs.
Yep.
But words like best value, like I don't know how to build that or calculate it with math.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, like, if, as an example, let's say an airline throws a lot of people into customer service
Mhm.
and they're constantly updating and they're constantly, they're babysitting the shipment. You feel that you're well taken care of. I would imagine those are value enhancers. Question is,
You know what? I
how do
would
you,
say at surface, yes, that's value enhancer, but like the reality is like as long as everything goes as planned, nobody cares. right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
on
it's it's
time
the
and intact, right?
yeah, right. It's the moments that really again adds value to the freight forwarder in my mind. Is how do you respond to the moments?
I was
Um,
just, you're absolutely right. As you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, no, it's what you're describing. It's how quick that carrier responds when there's an oh moment. That's the value enhancer.
That's right.
Yep.
And that's in our mind, we believe that that is also how you retain your customer, right? By knowing that, hey, crap happens. Like stuff happens all the time in logistics, as we know, right? It, that's not the issue of losing customers. The issue is not solving the problem, at least with a little bit of empathy, at least with a little bit of knowledge that, hey, this is affecting their livelihood. How do you help them support that? And it's also one of the reasons why I love the agents. But the reality of it is how do you measure that to build what is value in the airline?
So when Jeremy books a shipment through you, as usual, and books a shipment through you, are you updating Jeremy while the shipment's in transit?
So today we are not because it's not live yet.
Okay.
So today Jeremy takes care of unless Aircon's moving it for you. Today we're just booking it. It's either on your IATA, so your connections to the airlines, your rates.
Okay.
It could be through AMI, it could be
So he
through
just used
Shipco.
you as the travel agent or whatever you.
So we're the quoting that we're just doing the quoting agent today.
All right.
So if you have an account with Shipco, you have an account with AMI, United, it doesn't matter. We're pulling those rates for you and responding to the customer.
Okay.
Right.
And for
Um,
the biggest value for me, for all the freight forwarders in the room, is its collection plus air freight. So when you're setting up a new air exporter with TSA regulations, the collection's a huge part of it, and doing the collection in a certain way, right? Um, the enablement that I get from Aircon to have that, general coverage over the whole country to be able to do air export pickups and tenders, and then pair that with their rate savings on both the air freight and the collection, invaluable. It takes years to develop. Like you said, the big companies have it, but the smaller mid-sized guys have it in one or two ports, right? So that's a huge part of it for us.
So, and for the audience, for those who might not be familiar, Aircon versus Captain Cargo, how are they related?
Yeah, so Aircon is the parent company, if you will. We started off as a gateway as a service to the small to medium sized freight forwarder. We actually built Captain Cargo to support Aircon, right? Because one of our customers said, well, not just one, several of them said, "Hey, Chris, I don't want to go to another platform, right? I don't want to go take my email." So we built Captain Cargo to really get our customers onto our platform. And we saw a 40% increase in our win percentage. We saw a 2.5x times increase in our bookings, right, or revenue from that. And a light bulb went off. It's like, hey, if it's good for Aircon, it's got to be really good for the freight forwarder, especially the ones that deal with a lot of overseas agents, right? So a lot of them that are, their customers are, sitting in Kenya or sitting in, Delhi. How do they get door to airport rate, whatnot? We're also part of again, on the import side of things for the U.S. is we'll very shortly be able to give you a rate, competitive wholesale rate, non-retail freight forwarder, let's say somewhere in London to somewhere in Illinois, right? So door to door, not including customs, but that's way so you can meet your customer again where they're at when they need it. You're not required to use Aircon as a carrier. You're not required to use Aircon for anything. You can have your agent, but if you don't have a network, we have a network as a backstop to support you, right? And again, you can use. We don't care. Like we don't care if you use Shipco. We don't care if you use AMI. We don't care if you use American Airlines or British Airways. That is kind of your secret sauce as a freight forwarder. We're just trying to help facilitate you to gain more business and win more business.
So, Jeremy, is as you're talking to your customers, are you letting them know that you've got a relationship with Captain Cargo, or quite frankly, they wouldn't care?
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. We really promoted the new tool as right now it's only for air export, obviously, right? And I think every new forwarder wants to have a huge book of air export business, right? But we often get stuck importing. So when we're having those customer issues, no, they're very exciting. Look at our new tool. We can use it as a tool. You can look at your rate. You could book it without talking to me, or we can sit here and talk about it. And we're very much pitching it, just almost the same as Rich is pitching it. And people are excited about it. 90% of our quotes for air freight are looking for one of two things. It's the cheapest air freight or the fastest air freight.
Yeah.
The other part to talk about value is I needed to get there, right? So which ones are actually flying and have, a near high 90s arrival rate? I could
Right.
care less about claiming the money back. I could care less about, getting stuck in it. Like what's going to actually get there, right? So
Right.
that's the other thing that'll come up, and we're putting a little more. Like I said, you can always do one more thing. Are you making sure the warehouses are staffed? Are you making sure there's any issues with any incoming PMC DG conundrums they have coming, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so you try to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And Brandon, if we do our job right, no one will, like, none of the freight forwarders customers will know Captain Cargo exists.
Right.
Right. It's all in the background. If we
Right.
do our
It's all
job
part
right,
of the machine in the bag.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. And
Now with
real
the
quick,
freight,
you're making sure that when you get these, when you're quoting, when Captain Cargo quotes, you've got date parameters, I'm assuming. So you're checking to make sure this capacity actually exists.
Well, it depends on how you're quoting it. So whatever you, the freight forwarder, how you quote, Captain Cargo will mirror that. Right. So if you want to say you're valid for 7 days, you want to say how much capacity is in the next week. It's the quoting piece where you don't have the shipment yet.
Yeah.
The booking agent
Yeah.
requotes it again. So that's there's kind of two different silos, if you will. The
Yeah.
quoting is strictly how do we get the business,
Yeah.
right?
'Cause Jeremy,
How do you win the
that's
business?
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, oh boy, you quoted the shipment, now you got it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Carrier. The good
that's
news
the
is we got
problem.
the shipment.
Yeah,
The not so good news, we got the
Got the
shipment.
shipment.
that,
Exactly.
that's the problem I always want to have, right? We got it. Not what, not how do we do it
Right.
right?
Yeah, I think the saying is what a high water floats all boats, or high water
Yeah,
hides all
right.
stumps.
Exactly.
Whatever saying you want to go there. The idea is that the quoting piece isn't on a particular flight. It's not on a particular airline. The quoting is, hey, when do you need it? 5 to 10 days, or 5 to 7 days, 3 to 4 days, 2 days, whatever. When do
Yeah.
you need it? And then let us figure out, or the freight forwarder figure out how to route it.
Yeah.
In
All right.
a price that you're willing to pay.
So we're coming towards the end of our hour, and I, by way of recap, a couple of things here that I'm gleaning from this. First of all, on these tariffs, they're not updated on a quarterly basis anymore, and now they're daily risk. Heck, they're risk by the hour. So we got to be on top of it. If you're a freight forwarder, don't bury your head in the sand. Know what's going on to the extent that you can. And then I think the other takeaway is that manual quoting is a thing of the past, or becoming a thing of the past pretty quickly. You need it actually could be a complete liability for you long term. So you need some type of automation. And that's where AI is coming in. It's not a luxury anymore. It's something you really need to incorporate into your infrastructure somehow. Everyone does it differently. I would never tell any freight forwarder how to do it. Our job is just to show you what's out there, and you pick what works best for you guys. But I think um, that's important. So let's say, Chris, someone wants to learn more about Captain Cargo. What do
Yeah,
they?
you go to captaincargo.ai website. There's a book meeting there if you want to there, or you can email me at sales@airconai.com. LinkedIn, all that kind of good stuff. If you want to find us, we're just Google Captain Cargo. You can find us.
Good, and you'll give them a demo of how.
We'll give them a demo. We can show you. Yeah, and it's very, and at least in our head, it's very simple. It's hard to give a demo about how an email works, because that's really what it is, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I'd love to show you exactly what we're doing today, tomorrow, and beyond, because that's really the exciting stuff. We're doing the quoting now, but the really exciting stuff in my mind is once we get to that exception agent, and really help again, giving the power back to the where it belongs. And in my mind, that's a freight forwarder to gain and to maintain the business that they have.
And Jeremy, if another a member just wants to talk to you, not about proprietary information or rates or
Oh, sure.
or market strategy or anything like that, but they just want to get, let's say, a reference on
Yeah.
this to make sure he's a fine, upstanding citizen, how would they contact you?
So my LinkedIn's a great place. Also, you can go to info at f2f-intl.com. Our website is f2f-intl.com on there as well. And no, Brendan, I'm always excited to talk about freight. If anybody ever has any questions about freight forwarding or any cargo, or do you want to go on a long tangent about tariffs and America's place with tariffing, I'm always available to kind of ramble with you.
And let's remember something else. Jeremy, you've been in the business for a long time, so you're not a newcomer. And Chris, you're a recovering freight forwarder, so people, you know the business, so they can get
Yeah.
information from you and just how things work. So that'd be good. All right,
That's
well,
right.
look, guys, thanks a lot for coming today. Hopefully, we'll be able to do another one of these soon, especially
Yeah.
as tariff situation unfolds, because it's a rapidly unfolding story. And I'm Brandon Freed from Air Forwarders Association headquarters in Washington, D.C. If you have any, I'm being told by Michelle, if you have any suggestions, put them in the chat box. But other than that, thanks for joining us
All
again.
right. Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thanks,
Have a
Brendan.
great day.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye.